If you're looking to brew an IPA that's not like all the rest, check out Dick Cantwell's newest book, Brewing Eclectic IPA, Pushing the Boundaries of India Pale Ale. Award-winning brewer Cantwell includes 25 original IPA recipes and categorizes over 200 unique ingredients to spice up your IPA, from papaya to peppercorn, beets to bog myrtle, and cannabis to cocoa nibs. Order your copy of Brewing Eclectic IPA by Dick Cantwell at brewerspublications.com or wherever books are sold. brewerspublications.com. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, August 16th, 2018. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, we go back to another interview we recorded while in Portland for HomebrewCon as we talk to Sam Carroll of Occidental Brewing. At Occidental, they concentrate on German-inspired beers and produce a wide variety of delicious examples. We'll sample a bunch and get tips from Sam. Go to basicbrewing.com. You can find archives of our audio and video shows, our DVDs, our brewers' logbooks, and other Basic Brewing gear, including our tie-dye silicone pint. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook. We have a cool Basic Brewing app on iTunes and Amazon.com, and we're found all over the place where fine podcasts are served up. If you'd do us the favor of rating us on iTunes and maybe leaving a nice comment, they say that'll help new listeners to find us. And if you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. This past Friday, I posted an episode of Basic Brewing Video featuring my Cucumber Lemon IPA, which was inspired by Dick Cantwell's Eclectic IPA book. Some of you turned up your noses about the beer in the comments, but it really, seriously, wasn't bad. Just a little out of balance. Steve and I did enjoy the cucumber flavor. I just went a little overboard with it, and I think it would make a great addition to a refreshing, citrusy beer in the right proportions. So I don't think it's an off flavor. I think it's a good flavor. I just put too much in it. On those lines, I got an email from viewer Chris, who had a similar experience. Chris says, I just watched the Cucumber Lemon IPA video. Funny enough, I recently brewed a cucumber saison in the spirit of Hendrick gin with an addition of juniper berries during the boil. I ended up juicing 5 cucumbers, a bit too many, and adding a half a cup of juice to 5 gallons. Even at half a cup, Chris says, I had the same issue with too much cucumber flavor. It's definitely a refreshing beer for the summertime, and if I brew it again, I'll be decreasing the amount of cucumber for sure. So there you go. Go easy on the cucumber, at least until you dial in what you want in your cucumber beer. I have to give a shout-out to Casey from Imperial Organic Yeast for helping to arrange this week's interview with Occidental. Occidental was on a list of breweries that Casey recommended, and I sure am glad that we took her advice. It's a good show today. And speaking of our sponsors, Imperial Organic Yeast, they have a seasonal strain until the end of August. It's called A30 Corporate. Corporate is a Pacific Northwest favorite and is an excellent choice when making hop-forward American-style beers. It is the go-to for brut IPAs, they say, due to its clean fermentation profile and accentuation of hop flavor and aroma. Middle-of-the-road flocculation and fairly wide fermentation profile make this an easy strain to work with. You know, Steve and I love Imperial yeast. Steve sells a bunch of it, and I use a bunch of it. In fact, I have a packet of the A30 myself, and once we get all the kids off to college this week, I'm planning to brew a brut pale ale or IPA or something like that with Cascade hops. Imperial offers the highest cell count of any liquid yeast producer, 200 billion cells. Like I say, my stir plate is dusty because I don't make starters anymore with Imperial for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches. They are the only certified manufacturer of organic liquid yeast in the world, and you might remember them from being in the little cans, but now they have a handy, easy open pouch that works very nicely. Thanks to Imperial Organic Yeast for their support. Look for their seasonal release A30 Corporate for your hoppy beers through August. You still have time. I also want to give a shout-out to Lou from Bremerton, Washington. I met Lou briefly at HomebrewCon. He told me at that time that he brewed a beer based on my Lemon Drop Golden Ale from that I brewed in a January episode of Basic Brewing Video. Lou said that he entered his version in some homebrew competitions and wound up with second place in the 2018 Cascade Cup in the Strong Belgian category and first place in the inaugural Imperial Yeast Kreuzen Cup. So congratulations to Lou, and to top it all off, to show not only that he's a good brewer but a good guy, Lou sent me a couple of bottles of his beer based on my recipe to sample, and I opened up one for myself the other night, and man, it is a very tasty brew, well brewed. It makes me want to go back and revisit that recipe. And I have a second bottle that I plan to share with Steve, if I can stay away from it. It was tasty. So thanks, Lou. I appreciate it. I had to go back and look at that video episode from January to remind myself of that Lemon Drop Golden Ale. You know, you brew so many beers that if you don't have a logbook or a video podcast to remind you of, you know, what they were and how you brewed it, you forget, at least if you're like me. And that's one that really shows off the flexibility of my electric brewing system from our sponsors, Desiree and Dave of High Gravity in Tulsa. You knew that was coming, didn't you? This was a beer that had a couple of pounds more grain than I usually use. So I added a couple of gallons more of water to make sure that I got optimum efficiency in my brew-in-a-bag setup. You know, it's kind of like an extra sparge water in there. So I had, after I collected my wort, I had to boil for a longer time to get that excess water removed and the gravity where I wanted it. But it worked out well. I was real happy with my efficiency. With my electric system, it was no big deal to boil for an extra long period of time. With my old propane setup, I'd be worried, you know, that I'd have to go get another bottle of propane before I got started. And with the Warthog electric controller, I was able to do a hop stand after the boil at 180 degrees Fahrenheit, or 82 C in the winter outside. And I didn't have to worry about the temperature falling, even though it was cold. It was January. So electric brewing equals less worry in those regards. And when you buy a system from Dave and Desiree, you get something that Dave builds himself. So if you have questions, you can call him and get really personal service. High Gravity has a wide range of different electric systems and Warthog controllers from 5 gallons all the way up to 2 barrels. Check them out at highdgravitybrew.com and take the pain out of propane with family-owned and operated highdgravitybrew.com. And before I forget, again, I want to congratulate Tim and Amanda at High Gravity on their new addition. Welcome to the world, Olivia Grace. You've got a great family surrounding you. And congratulations to Grandma and Grandpa, Desiree and Dave. Okay, let's head up to Portland to talk to Sam Carroll at Occidental Brewing and sample some delicious German-style beers. Sam Carroll, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks for having me.
And here are the usual suspects: Steve Wilkes.
Hi, James.
Bob Stimsky.
Hi, James.
We are here at a brewery where I take it that the Reinheitsgebot is, if not in full force, respected. Is that right, Sam?
It's definitely respected. We don't follow it to a T, but it's respected.
Where are we at?
Well, we're in St. John's, Occidental Brewing, a small brewery right under the bridge. It's a nice little enclave right on the north end of Portland, and it's kind of booming.
And you're right next door. You got your Wurst House next door, so German fare to go along with the German beers.
That's correct, yep. Sorry, we've got a partnership with a guy, David, who runs Urban German. He's been around the beer scene for a while as a food cart, going to beer festivals and things like that. But about 2 years ago, we joined forces with him, and he went brick and mortar with us up there. And so he runs the food program, and we do the beers.
Awesome. Well, talk about give us some background on the brewery. Who is Occidental, and talk about give us the elevator pitch kind of who you are as a brewery.
Sure. So in 2011, that's when Occidental started. Dan and Ben Engler, uncle nephew, they opened the brewery, and Dan had long been homebrewing, and Ben had been doing some homebrewing as well. Dan was an attorney at the time, and Ben had a job right after college and got laid off. And so they sort of figured that it was a good time to make a move if they wanted to open a brewery, and they both liked German-style beers, and so recognized there was not a glut of that in Oregon, and went for it and opened the brewery, and we've kind of stayed true to that. We do this and that here and there, but for the most part, we do all German-style beers. We've got a Czech-style Pilsner, and then we do a couple of Belgian beers a year maybe, and then one of the beers that we'll taste later, we did a Japanese rice lager, so we get off the German path a little bit, but for the most part, we do German-style beers.
So what should we start with? Should we start with the Maibach that we've got out of the bottle here?
Yeah, that sounds good. It's a light, sort of easy drinking beer. It's a little higher on the ABV at 7%, but it's clean. It won't destroy your palate or anything.
Wow, I don't know. That's really good.
Yeah, that's a very fine beer. Tell me about the grain bill and the hops and such in this beer.
So the Maibach is a lot of Weyermann Pils. We've got a little bit of just a little bit of Carafoam and a little bit of Munich, but for the most part, it's Weyermann Pils, and we use Hallertauer, Mittelfruit, and Tettnang as the aroma addition.
So I'm going to just go out on a limb here, and I think all your beers are going to be very noble hops, straight ahead grain bills. I love it.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're just trying to do a good job.
And the malt profile is really what stands out in this beer. To me, it's got a nice, thing about Box, and I don't know a whole lot about Box, but is that nice, kind of caramely background, that's not cloying and overpowering, but it's just there. It's kind of a nice balance to, the kind of brighter hoppy components of the beer, and that's a beer that I could drink all day and I get tired of it. What do you think, Bob?
I think it's beautiful. In fact, I like IPAs and everything, but this is kind of refreshing. It's kind of like when I was a kid and sneaking beer from my grandfather. It tastes a little bit like I remember as a kid.
Sure.
So talk about what if you're a home brewer and you are, you're talking to home brewers out there.
Sure.
If you want to brew a beer like this, what are the keys that you think we have to look out for?
I think just refrain. It's pretty easy to overdo things when you're doing beers like this. All these beers are sort of about subtleties and history and things like that. So you can easily overdo it by thinking hops are sexy and trying to, this hop sounds great, smells great, it's the new thing. Like, it says an ounce, but I'm going to do an ounce and a half or whatever. It's just,
right.
And then next thing you know, you don't have the same beer. So I think that's kind of the main thing. And then take your time. Take your time. Allow the yeast to do what it wants to do. Don't try to speed it up or anything like that. That's kind of the main two things with what we do.
And what's the malt bill look like? What's the balance of the components of the malt bill?
Mostly Pilsner. I would have to look back. We only do this beer once a year. I would have to look back on the exact percentages, but it's 93% Pilsner.
It almost carries. There's a little bit of honey note that comes through, and there's clearly no honey in it, but it's just so nicely balanced, rich, malty. Great mouthfeel. It's a terrific beer.
And so of course, the trickiest part about brewing German beers probably is, there are things that happen in the mash tun as well. I mean, do you guys do decoctions with these beers?
So we don't. We're not set up for that. We've got a 2-vessel system, 3 with a hot liquor tank. So we've got a combo mash lauter tun and then a brew kettle. So we do all single infusion, but we're just, we've designed around that. And
I mean, again, I don't know a ton about decoction, but this tastes to me like it's a little more complex than just a single infusion mash. It seems like you could have done, a decoction in there to add that kind of complexity in there. But it's impressive that you did achieve, something so tasty with just a single infusion mash.
Oh, well, thank you.
And what about fermentation? I mean, that's the tricky part. I mean, this beer is clean as a whistle, and as I anticipate the rest of these will be as well. So, what are the keys to brewing a nice, clean, German style lager beer?
Sure. Well, like I said earlier, time, temperature, take your time. So we knock out. We're not the. You can read all the literature on how to knock out for lagers and things like that. We're not the coldest on the block or anything. We're knocking out, low 50s, and then fermenting in the low 50s. There are people that do lots of, knocking out in the 40s and fermenting in the 40s and things like that. We're not quite that low, but that's the main thing is you got to knock out cold and make sure that you're using the right amounts of yeast and that they are happy and they have their nutrients and free amino nitrogens and things like that they want. And then too much yeast, you're going to have a different beer. Not enough yeast, you're going to have a different beer. So you kind of have to find out what you want and then give it that.
So what's your average pitching rate compared to, say, an ale fermentation?
So ales, like, for instance, our Hefeweizen, which he's pouring a sample of, we purposely underpitch that, because you want that banana and clove to come through. The yeast kind of scrambles a little bit once you underpitch it and gives off a lot of those byproduct. And then for some of our other ales, like the Kolsch and the alt beer, we're pitching right at what most manufacturers, say Imperial yeast or Y yeast or White Labs, recommend. And then for our Pilsners and our other lagers, sometimes we overpitch a little bit just to let them have that nice lag period where they just kind of settle in slowly and then get to it when they feel like it. Which normally is 24, 36 hours before we notice any activity.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Homebrewers would be extremely nervous at that time. They'd be calling Steve saying, "What's wrong with my beer?"
Oh, yeah. I got a text from a guy. He's like, I pitched this almost 24 hours ago. It's not doing anything. But give it a little toast. Roust it up. It'll be okay. Rouse.
And then oxygen, too.
Yeah.
So, and is it just oxygen at the first, in the beginning?
Correct, yep. Yeah, we knock out with, an inline sort of oxygen stone. And the way we're set up, we have a 10-barrel brew house and we have some 30-barrel tanks. So we'll do 2 brews on one day and then do the third brew on the second day. And so in that case, we won't oxygenate on the second day.
Okay, I've got more lager questions later, but now we're on this Hefeweizen, and
You are.
Well, you guys are. This is not a race, you guys. But I get on the nose. There's a lemony.
Yeah, a lot of lemon on it.
Aroma, and then there's banana and clove, and I swear I get a little bit of cinnamon as well. What do you on the Hefeweizen?
I agree.
That's cheating, Bob.
I know. But I was thinking about the brewery and not this. I wanted to ask you, did you come up with the name Occidental on purpose or was it accidental?
Yeah, that's a pretty common one. Yeah, it's no, Occidental is it just means westward or western. So it's the opposite of the Orient.
You learned something.
Yeah, that's why I'll forget it in 5 minutes anyway.
So, Steve, talk about the heavy.
You know, I didn't have that big a sample, but
There's more.
no, I'm kidding. Actually, what I really picked up from my actual small sample, so I didn't have enough to let it warm. But when I very first tasted it, it was very lemony and really clean, but still had that nice banana clove thing going, which sometimes people think that means it's not clean, but it was very clean. Mm-hmm. It's very nice. And, you know, just as a comment, I had a customer who brewed a wheat beer, heavy, and he used plenty of actual imperial Stefan. And he came back, and he didn't complain, but he said it fermented. He had so much yeast in there that he didn't pick up those banana and clove flavors like he wanted, and we'd had a discussion about it. And it was very interesting to talk about the pitch rate. And at a homebrew level, you generally just rip the pack open and throw it in. But it does make sense to think about, if you're willing to stress that yeast on purpose, why you would want to do that.
Sure. Yeah, that's absolutely why we do it, is to get the banana and clove.
And I've tried to brew a nice Hefeweizen, a few times in the past, and I haven't gotten that level, and is it pitch rate, is it temperature, is it, are there, do you do like a what is it, a ferulic rest in the mash, or what are the keys? How do you get that character?
Sure, yeah. So temperature is involved. I don't want to say that it's absolutely pitch rate, but pitch rate at the right temperature is how you get that. And so, the warmer the fermentation, the more of the ester and that you get, so the phenolics. And so, yeah, the combination, the nice, X in the line chart is where you want to be at.
And what's the malt bill like?
So it's we've toyed with it a little in the past, but it's basically 70% malted white wheat, and then Pilsner or two-row, and then we use some acidulated to lower the pH on the mash. That might be where you guys are getting some of that lemon.
Yeah, I think maybe, for sure.
But it's nicely balanced. I mean, I say the term nicely balanced a lot on the show, but it's not like drinking banana bread. So it's drinkable.
Yeah, we like it to be sort of seltzery and light mouthfeel, even though it's sort of a cloying, heavier style.
Very nice. So what's next? What do we? Okay.
Kolsch.
Oh, the Kolsch. Yeah, there's a couple of Kolsches around our area. The Springfield Brewing Company has a really nice Kolsch out right now, and Bentonville Brewing Company has a nice Kolsch. I think Kolsch, as well as Pilsner, this is a style that people are starting to brew now to kind of take a break from all the hops.
Sure, yeah. This Kolsch is definitely in my top 3 favorite beers that we make here. It's, obviously it's great in the summertime and when it's warm out, but I can drink it year-round. And it's one of those perfect... When people say session beers, I think of Kolsch, because it's 4.5%. Ours is really clean. Doesn't upset your stomach. It's not loaded with hops. It doesn't stress your palate out. But it's got enough complexity there to sort of keep you interested.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's the style to me is, and maybe it's because I'm used to drinking all these hops. The style to me is a little on the sweet side compared to all the hop bombs that we're used to drinking.
Sure.
Which to me makes it more sessionable even. But it's nice and clean. And again, another beer that I could just drink all day.
Yeah. Kolsch has always been one of my favorite beers. In fact, I went so far as actually buy the Kolsch glasses, the long, thin ones. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've always loved it because it can be transferred to everybody in the family. There's to some, they don't like hoppy, they don't like dark. You have a Kolsch, everybody's happy.
Sure, absolutely.
I got nothing.
Nothing.
So what's the keys? What are the keys to brewing a good Kolsch?
So obviously, most people probably know the Kolsch has kind of its own hybrid yeast. Kolsch yeast, a Dieter at Imperial, I think.
Yeah.
039. And yeah, I mean that's kind of where the nuance comes from, I guess, is from the yeast strain. Colder, it's technically an ale, but you can do it cold like a lager.
I was going to say, do you guys lager it?
We do, yeah. So we do it a little colder than what most people are probably doing ales, and give it a nice lager once it's done in primary, and moderately hopped. You want enough of that sort of noble, spicy, floral hop character to come through, which I think we've done a pretty good job on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say the style is a little sweet, but it is well balanced. It's not like cloyingly syrupy sweet or anything like that. So the primary fermentation is somewhere between typical lager and ale temperature.
Yeah, yep.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
You've challenged us, Sam, with a lot of beers here, but we are up to this challenge.
We don't have to get to all of them.
Oh, yes, we do.
Okay.
We're pacing ourselves. We're taking a little sip. We're taking a little sips, and we just had lunch.
So next is our alt beer. So originating in Dusseldorf.
Yep. So tell us about the style of beer.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tricky one. In the States, a lot of people don't know about it, but it's it originates in Dusseldorf, Germany, and the reason why I say it's tricky is I went to Germany for the first time last year, and we went to Cologne and Dusseldorf, and in Cologne where Kolsch originates. Very similar. Every brewery, you go to every brewery, and the Kolsch it's a Kolsch, and it tastes like a Kolsch, and this one tastes a little different than that one, etc. But at every historic alt beer brewery, the beers were incredibly different, and they kind of have the same, like they serve them in those tall stanges, and they do the barrel tapping and things like that. So the sort of history is sort of the same there, but it really opened my eyes seeing how different each beer was. So the reason why I say it's tricky is it's kind of up to brewery interpretation. And so ours is sort of, I don't want to say fits the Pacific Northwest style a little better, but it's kind of on the hoppier end of things for us.
There's a little more caramel character than the Kolsch as well.
Yeah, and it does have a good hop backbone. I quite like this. What are the malts that you use in it?
So this is our most complex beer in terms of the malt bill for sure. So we use some Vienna malt, some Pilsner malt, Munich, a little bit of C75, and what else? Just some special carafa for a little bit of color.
What do you think, Bob?
I think it's another beer that just about anybody could like, as an alternative to IPAs, and even if they don't care for something like Kolsch, because it doesn't have enough. This has a little bit more, and it's perfect. I love it.
So I have a lagering question. When you are, after primary fermentation is done, do you dump the yeast, or do you transfer to another vessel, or what's your strategy then?
Well, often it kind of depends. Since we're a commercial brewery and we're supplying the market with, if you're asking strictly about lagers, since we're supplying the market with draft and cans, and we've got a 10-barrel brew house, things aren't always the same every time based on how fast, not fast, I don't want to say, we don't rush the beer, but how quickly we're turning the next batch. So we harvest right from our cone to pitch for the next brew. So oftentimes right after primary, we never pull all the yeast out because, we take things to diacetyl rest and things like that. So we leave it on the lees, so to speak. But we never purposely remove all of the yeast while it's still in fermentation or diacetyl rest, or even when we start the lagering phase. Oftentimes we get a lot of it out, but we're never in the case where, a beer is done with our lagering cycle and we need to leave it in the tank for very long because we're always getting it out. If that happens to be the case in the wintertime or something when we're slower, then definitely we try to get all of that yeast out of there. But that's just not really the case for us ever.
Yeah, that's another thing that ale brewers or ale home brewers don't think about, maybe, if they don't know about lagers, is that yeast has a lot more work to do during a longer period of time, and if it's not in there, then it can't do the work. And if you've ever tasted a young a young lager that's not done yet, if you like butterscotch, you'll love those. And and I'm sensitive to diacetyl. So, what are how do you make sure that you do a successful diacetyl rest or clean up the beer? How do you let the temperature rise naturally, or how do you accomplish that?
Sure. Yeah. So we we're doing hydrometer gravity readings along the way, and when our beers get to a certain point, which is normally around 5 degrees Plato, we will allow the beer to free rise while it's the last few degrees of fermentation. And that does a good job of cleaning itself up. This yeast that we use will throw some sulfur, and diacetyl obviously is a byproduct of fermentation. But if you treat it right and you pay attention and you catch it at the right time, it has time and ability to clean itself up.
I went with Bob to the Great Taste of the Midwest one year, and somebody was marketing a butter popcorn pilsner, which to me sounded like the marketing department got involved in and didn't want to dump a beer. But yeah. So how long does it take, or do you just have to monitor the batches to see when the beer is done, when the beer is clean?
Yeah, monitoring. We have a large enough sample size where we have a pretty good guess how long it'll take. The reason why we picked the point of allowing free rise is because that normally is enough time. By the time that beer is terminal, it's normally cleaned itself up. However, we do monitor every batch, and there's things that every once in a while the beer needs an extra day than you planned. And you can do pretty simple, straightforward tests with equipment that everyone has at home to check it. What are called VDK tests, or vicinal diketones, is what you're looking for, and those are the precursors. And so the way that you can do that is a couple of small glasses. Put one to the side, that's going to be your control, and then the other one you put in hot water and let heat up, and then cool back down, and then you compare them, and if one smells like buttered popcorn, then it's not time.
Huh. Well, there you go.
That's the coolest thing I've heard all week. I've never heard of that. That's
very nice. What do we have here?
So it looks like you guys are onto the Dunkel now.
Yep.
Which historically, comes from Munich and would be a lager. We do ours with our Kolsch yeast, just because we weren't doing lagers year-round in the beginning, and so we had the Kolsch yeast, but the Kolsch yeast lends itself to those colder temperatures, so nice ability to handle a beer like the Dunkel.
It's just so nice and clean. All the beers have just been sparkling, just very refreshing, very easy drinking beers. Every one of these, and this is lovely. It's kind of a little bit of a copper color, maybe goes more to brown than red, but very light. it's light on the palate. I've had Dunkels that were a lot heavier than this, and I like this a lot.
I can't make any improvement on what Steve said. It's very refreshing beer. It's got great color, great taste. The viscosity is perfect. It's a Dunkel.
Now it's a Dunkel Weiss, right? So
no. This is just a Dunkel. We
okay.
We do a Dunkelweizen every fall, and actually a lot of people mix those up. Accounts, distributors, employees, etc. But this one's just a straight Dunkel, and that's a thing, Dunkel, But Dunkelweizen might be more popular. More people might know about Dunkelweizen as a style than Dunkel, but this is just the straightforward version.
Well, I'm glad I asked that stupid question. If you don't know, it's not stupid. So what... I mean, this is, again, a beer with some more kind of caramely notes in it. So what sets it apart from, say, a Maibach?
Sure, yeah. So this one is, again, it's pretty low ABV. Ours is 5.2, whereas the Maibach is a Bach, is heavier. But the Dunkel is, it's what Munich malt was made for. It's a showcase of Munich malt. And like I said earlier, historically as a lager, technically a lager, we've lagered ours with an ale yeast, but I guess that's what sets it apart. It's a sweeter, cleaner, it's a little, sorry, not sweeter and cleaner, but it's kind of a sweet style, even though it is clean on the mouth feel, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to compare the Dunkel and the Maibach.
It's delicious. So how much percentage-wise of the malt bill is Munich in this?
Well, ours is 100%.
Oh, nice. Wow. Well,
it has not always been and might not always be. But most of the time when people are doing Dunkels, other people that I know that do Dunkels, it's always north of 90. Some people will add a little bit of maybe a touch of Vienna or a touch of Pils to lighten it up a little bit, and then follow it up with some chocolate to get that chocolatey bit out of what they omitted in the Munich.
Mm-hmm. Steve, you did a Munich braggot, the most recent episode of the podcast or the video podcast that we posted. So. Compare and contrast, or can you get some of the same notes out of this beer as you did out of your braggot?
Actually, yeah. The beer that James was talking about was just a 2.5 gallon batch of beer with 3 pounds of Munich as the base malt, and then 4 pounds of honey added at fermentation. So that's the beer. But yeah, there is a similarity. Actually, the color isn't all that much different. My beer is a lot richer, or darker in color. And then, of course, the beer itself was, north of 12%. So they're not the same beer.
Right.
But the Munich malt does come through in both beers very nicely, even though they're very different beers.
It's so we've got so many tools or toys to play with in the toy box, or tools in the toolbox to play with, and it's really cool to see one expressed, so nicely, and that you can then use that knowledge to kind of formulate other more complex recipes as far as, a grain bill with more ingredients, or, what if I tossed a little bit of this into there or a little bit of that into there? So what's your recipe inspirations? I mean, where do you go when you're thinking of, I want to do this style? What's your resources?
Sure. Well, luckily history's on our side. A lot of these beer styles have been around for 500, 600 plus years, and so there's plenty of literature out there. You can, I know, speaking for myself personally, and my bosses Ben and Dan, we've all three been big on just reading as many books as we can about the styles, or what you can find online and different things like that. And you read enough stuff about beer styles, you can sort of make your own amalgamation on what you think it should be. And then from there, hopefully you have developed sort of your own personal, by doing things like this, sort of your own personal desires on what you want that specific beer to come out like, and then you can combine what you have been reading about for years versus your own experience.
Well, this beer, I don't know what it is, but it smells delicious. What do we got?
Oh, so it looks like we moved on to the Mr. Sparkle, which is a beer we made recently with our friends down at Widmer Brothers Brewing, just down the hill from us. And so it's a Japanese-style rice lager. We made it at their facility in their... yeah, it's pretty interesting.
That's really good. I don't have a wise comment. It's just that's really good. Yeah.
To me, this is a lot more fruity and there's a floral characteristics. So it's not as quote unquote clean as as the other. This is more playful, I'd say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the way this one worked out is my boss Dan and a guy named Tom Bly who works over at Widmer, who's an industry veteran, has been at several breweries in Portland for quite a while, good friends of ours, have been talking for a long time about wanting to do a collaboration together, and this Japanese-style rice lager sort of is what came of that idea, and we finally were able to collaborate with those guys. And so you hit the nail on the head. It was just kind of a playful thing to do that was still going to be in our wheelhouse, but that would be fun for the Widmer guys to do. And so, yeah, it's a really clean lager. What's crazy about it is that we used a lot of Pilsner malt and rice, obviously, but we also used some alpha amylase extract, and really, the thing finished negative.
Yeah, really? Just chewed right through it.
Yeah, and so considering that, the fact that it still tastes kind of sweet is pretty fun.
I agree. I really get the rice in it. It's light and tasty, delicious. What percentage is it?
That is 5.9%.
And what percentage rice to Pilsner or something?
I would have to look back. We used, we were on their smaller brew house, so I want to say, and don't quote me on this even though I'm talking into a microphone, but I want to say that we used something like 500 pounds total of grain and then 110 pounds of rice.
Oh, wow.
Something like that. In that ballpark.
Well, I'm surprised that you say it finished so low, because it is not like super watery or super dry or what. How do you account for that? Why does it have so good a mouthfeel?
I think that there's just so much starch and protein that carried over from those from the rice. I know it's totally clear. You can't see it. It doesn't look hazy, but that is my best guess.
Yeah, there's kind of an earthiness to the beer that's really nice. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. That's all I got.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
So what's next? What do we got? Which one should we go down the line, or?
Yeah, let's see. Let's go with let's go to our Pilsner next, which is this one here.
Okay.
Like the Pilsners. Those seem to be, there was a wave of Pilsners there for a while. I think we may still have some.
So this is a Bohemian-style Pils, so Czech Pils. We make this one year-round, and we haven't drafted in cans. And this is it's a fantastic beer, in my opinion.
Again, it just smells good. I haven't tasted it yet, but it just smells wonderful. What's it smell like, Sam?
Spice.
Yeah.
Clean, a little bit of sort of peppery spiciness from the Czech Saaz hops that we use.
Yep. Definite pepper notes, and super nice graininess. It's one of the things I like my favorite beers all kind of carry a graininess through them, and this one does it brilliantly. It's very nice.
Totally agree. I like the graininess of it and cleanliness of it. It's nice on the palate.
And so, I'm sure the recipe or the ingredients is simple on this beer, but it doesn't taste simple. It's deceptively complex. And you don't, when you think of like mass-produced, I don't want to slam anybody, but when you think of mass-produced pilsners, quote unquote, you think of a beer that is not challenging, is not complex, and it's a shame because it's a style that can be really interesting and inspiring. So what goes into this beer?
Sure. So it's again, you're probably noticing a trend here, but we use a lot of Wireman Pilsner. Mostly Wireman Pilsner. We use some Carafoam, which is a Wireman product. It's a really light-colored caramel malt, and we use that for just sort of up in the mouthfeel, and it's great for head retention and things like that. But mainly Pilsner malt, which should come as no surprise since we're brewing a Pilsner. But I think the key here for these beers is something I mentioned earlier, which is just kind of using restraint and allowing what should shine through to shine through. And in this case, it's the Pilsner malt.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the yeast?
So we use a yeast that originated from the Ondex brewery, just Ondex yeast, and I forget the name at Imperial, but Imperial carries it.
That is just so good. So talk about the hopping strategy and talk about the, again, you're talking to homebrewers and they want to make an excellent Pilsner.
Sure.
Talk about the recipe.
Yeah, so I want to be careful here because when I say that it gets a big bittering load, I'm saying that on Occidental scale. So for us, it gets a big bittering load, and then 15 minutes and 5 minutes, it gets a smaller aroma addition. And bitterness is really what this beer needs, but it has to be subtle. So that grainy, malty sweetness that you want to carry the beer needs to be balanced a little bit by a bittering addition. And in that alt beer that we tasted earlier might be our hoppiest beer, quote unquote, but the amount of hops that we put into one single beer, the Pilsner might be on the top just because of that bittering load we put in there. But again, restraint.
So how many IBUs are we talking about?
We're talking about, I don't know, I know you guys at home can't see our board, but we don't list IBUs here, and we don't really calculate them other than just sort of pen and pencil scratch it out. But we're talking right around 30, 40 IBUs.
And your starting gravity is what?
Is around 12 Plato.
So 48. So
1048.
So if you do the Ray Daniels designing great beers formula of bitterness to starting gravity, the scale is going to be tipped towards gravity rather than IBUs still.
Sure.
But again, that's appropriate for the style.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, Pilsners are clean, crisp, but they do have some bitterness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they shouldn't be cloying. They should be refreshing and crisp, and want to make you eat another pretzel. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, that's what they're for.
Yeah, you should be able to drink a liter of that, and not be tired by the end of it. Your taste bud. You might be tired by the end of it, but your taste buds should not be tired by the end of it.
Moving on.
So do we have two left? Have we?
Two left. So I think we should go with this Keller beer next, which is a cellared beer is the way that translates. But it's another lager that we did, and it's unfiltered. It's just kind of allowed to cellar, and it's a nice beer. We brought it out for the summer and just kind of a one-off / seasonal that we happen to have on right now. But it's a really fun one.
You say it's unfiltered, but I would not classify this as either hazy or juicy.
Right.
This is not a New England.
Right.
Yeah, compared to the. It is hazier than the Maibach. Is that a Maibach? That's not a Maibach. Is that a U-Bach? That's not a Maibach. Okay, I'm still smelling. You have to. Are you still tasting? Maybe you should talk about this beer, how you made it before we're still contemplating here. So, yeah.
Sure, yeah. So again, this is heavy on the Wireman pills,
Yep.
and this and that. I forget exactly what we put in this. It's been a little ways, but we use our same Ondex Pills yeast and don't filter it out of there. And that yeast has definitely adds a distinct sort of, I don't know, flowery, chalky sort of taste and mouthfeel to the beer.
This beer is a little lighter. The mouthfeel is a little lighter than the pills, and it's very flowery. It's very, very nice and light, and it's not a dessert beer, so don't take this word that far. But it has this nice, like it would really go well with desserts. Like maybe that's a better way to put it. That it really would lend itself toward foods that are light and maybe sweet. Crepes, waffles, things like that would be great with this.
Yeah, I'd have it for breakfast any day.
There we go. Bob's breakfast beer.
Can't have anything for breakfast.
That's true.
It and don't take this in the wrong way, but it is a little more sort of raw than the others. I think maybe because it's not filtered, and maybe because it's a little that yeast maybe presence is maybe it's my imagination, but I think that it is a little less refined, but in a good way. I think it's a delicious beer, and it's interesting how just that little difference can make such a difference in the character.
Sure, yeah, it's a fun one that we did. Just kind of we all enjoy drinking it, so bringing something like that out, and it's not something that we do all the time. The last time we brewed this beer, I think, was in 2015. So, they're pretty popular in other cities, especially, and it's a nice way to do a lager without having to give it so much time to settle out or to filter it. The other area where it stands out from our Pilsner is that it definitely doesn't have as much of that bitterness. So some of the honey sweetness or the flowery aspects of the hopping kind of shine through a little more.
So do you think, on the ones, are you losing anything by filtering? As a follow the rule kind of purist, kind of German style brewery, you got to filter, you got to make the beer as clean as possible, but is there something that is lost during the filtering process? Do you taste the beers before and after filtering?
Yeah, so certainly you lose things during filtration, but I think if you know that going in, you can build it a little to prepare for that. Things that are lost, there's no question that yeast adds both flavor and mouthfeel to beer and other things. And so cleanliness and crispness that goes along with filtration is really what we're after, along with shelf stability and other positives. There are cons. You do lose a little bit of hop aroma and things like that, but that's not necessarily what we're after with our beers. So it works really well for us.
Oh my goodness. I just took a swig of this beer, or a small sip, of this of this beer, and wow. There's nothing subtle about this one. This is this steps out there as far as the flavor is concerned. What do we got?
Yeah, I think that's why we skipped down the line and saved this one for last. So this is a fun beer that we do every year. Actually, this is an iteration of a fun beer that we do every year. We make a Doppelbock that we call our Lucubrator. And so we do a clean version that we bring out every winter. And we've actually won a gold medal for that at the World Beer Cup.
Oh, wow.
And then this that we're drinking today is a barrel-aged version of that beer.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's been in neutral oak. Actually, this year we had some new bourbon barrels that were just emptied, so we blended those in as well, but mostly neutral oak. And yeah, it's a big German Doppelbock.
Yeah. It's just so caramelly, and it's just a lovely beer. I was just looking at your menu and thinking, what do you do when the guy walks in and says, I want an IPA, or I want a stout, and you have to do a little beer education? I wonder, does that happen to you guys?
Oh, that absolutely happens all the time, which is fine. We welcome it.
Yeah.
We want to let people know what German-style beers are, or lagers, or whatever, and I kind of touched on it a little earlier with that alt beer, but normally when someone walks in and doesn't look at the menu and says, I'll have your IPA, we sort of say, well, hey, we do all German styles here, but why don't you try this alt beer? You might like it, or if someone walks in and orders a stout, we don't always have a big, heavy beer on, so sometimes we send them to the Dunkel because it's at least dark colored and a little sweet, but this Lucubrator plays in there pretty well too when we do have that on. And normally it's in the wintertime when people are asking for stouts, so we have that on.
So tell me about the grain bill on this beer.
Oh, it's pretty complex too. So a lot of Munich too, some Pilsner, some melanoidin malt since we can't decoct it, and then this and that.
Yeah.
Smaller additions.
A little bit of caramel or some chocolate, maybe, I don't know what, to bring a little of that dark in there. But actually, the Munich 2 is going to give you almost that color on its own. Mm-hmm. So
I swear there's maple syrup in this beer.
Right.
It's brown sugar, and maybe it's the wood character that's coming through, but it leans toward maple syrup to me.
Oh, that baby's deep, rich, flavorful. Yeah. It's my favorite. And I think if I had gone on another beer diet, I could probably lose a lot of weight drinking that one.
Bob did the monk strategy of only drinking beer for a while. How long did you go?
I went 2 weeks, and I could have gone longer, but my wife had a birthday, so we had to, But I lost 18 pounds in 2 weeks.
All right.
And that's all I had. In fact, since I brew a lot of IPAs, I had some hop debris in one of mine, and I spit out the hop debris, the little tiny pieces. Because
you're a purist.
I was a purist.
You're on a diet.
It worked. Yeah, I was.
Damn hop salad for you.
Yeah.
You can't put enough 1,000 pounds on there. No. That's right.
Not to be off topic or anything, but wow, all of these beers were delicious. It's just really. Some of the differences between the styles are kind of subtle, and but they're definitely there. And it's interesting, it is a palette that you're not talking about neon colors here. You're talking about a pastel palette, but at the same time it's deep and rich.
Well, and it just gets back to the history of beer. It goes back in time before neon flavored beers, and so you go into some breweries and it's almost like the flavors are shouting at you, and they're all shouting at you as loud as they can to compete for your palate. This is a much softer approach, and yet between one end of the sample board to the other, they're very different beers. This beer is nothing like, and yet none of them hit you over the head with hops. None of them made you want to just, like, I can't serve this to my wife because she'll, these are all great beers, but they're all in that kind of wheelhouse that comes from traditional brewing, and it just so happens it's German traditional brewing.
And some breweries we go through, and that we'll do a sampling like this, and we'll do like a 4-ounce sampler or whatever. Or what's the size of?
Yeah, these are 4 ounces.
4 ounce. So we're 4-ounce sampling, and sometimes they'll get a 4-ounce sampler or something and say that is really a delicious beer and so complex and there's so much going on, but that's all I want,
Sure, yeah.
And but I could drink maybe not a liter of the last one, but most of these beers I could sit down, with some brats and some pretzels and drink a liter of this and be a really happy guy.
Sure, yeah. Everyone has that sort of image of Oktoberfest where people are carrying around 8-liter mugs in their hands or whatever, and that's a little excessive, maybe, but that's kind of the whole idea behind these beers, is that they're beers for the people, and we want people to sit down and have fun and have one or two. I don't know if you guys have noticed yet, but we don't have a TV or anything in here. We want people to come in here and meet each other and talk to each other and have fun. I mean, we've got an incredible assortment of customers that we consider regular customers that come in here all the time just to talk to each other and share a few of these sort of clean beers, and they don't get blown out by having 2 or 3 of them.
And all the problems of the world are solved within these walls.
That's right.
Well, this has been a blast. It's been a lot of fun, and I love talking about about subtleties and about strategies that where it's not just like a fistful of that and a fistful of that, and it's you do wonderful work, Sam, and you guys here at Occidental are very talented. And my phone's buzzing, and I don't know who that is. I'm going to shut them off. I got beer to drink. So thanks for the hospitality, and I wish you guys were opening a Northwest Arkansas branch here soon. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Oh, and thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, James.
Forget about us. Yeah. We didn't hurt my feelings.
Well, thanks again to Sam and Steve and Bob. We were really impressed and inspired by that visit. And when my basement cools down this winter, one of my goals is to try to brew some German styles that I haven't attempted and take advantage of the cold basement temperatures. And maybe eat some sausage, which we did also after the interview. What a fun time. And a beautiful place. Their location there is right under that bridge. I can't remember what the bridge is called, but it's gorgeous. So I got a shirt, an Occidental shirt with their logo with the bridge for my wife, Susan, which she wears. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check all that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. Get a free Basic Brewing bottle opener with any DVD combo, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too. You can find our logbooks where you can track and log up to 50 batches of beer. Check all that out at basicbrewingshop.com. Also, take a look at our silicone pints. It's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.